It's New Year's Eve. The residents of Moscow are joyfully celebrating the start of the new 2023. However, some of the more observant partygoers occasionally notice colorful advertisement projections displayed on the grey residential commie blocks. Advertisements not for a newly opened shopping mall, a local oligarch's business, or even propaganda materials for this special military operation throughout Moscow. Ads are illuminating for the Russian Darknet market dealing in illegal goods, OMG Market. This is, however, a spectacular response to an equally spectacular marketing trick by their competition, which under the name Kraken was running an identical business in the Darknet, and for their promotional purposes a bus wrapped in Kraken's logo had earlier blocked one of Moscow's main roads, the Novi Arbat Avenue. Kraken's ads could also previously be seen on the video billboards in the Moscow Business Center, displayed as if nothing unusual was happening on an otherwise ordinary day. All of this is the aftermath of an intense war over the Russian Darknet market of illegal substances. A war that intensified especially when the servers of one of the most powerful Darknet markets in the East, Hydra, were shut down by German authorities in April of 2022. So if you would like to learn more, enjoy the video. In this video we did everything we could to make it great. The subject, the research, the editing, everything in this video should be just spot on. And if you would like to watch more challenging and complex topics like these, I invite you to support me on Patreon as well as on YouTube by subscribing this channel, commenting under this video and giving this video a like. First of all, thank you a lot, and now back to the video. The history of the Russian Darknet market for illegal goods actually first begins in around 2012. It was then that a user under the pseudonym Darkside established a forum on the Darknet called Russian Anonymous Marketplace, abbreviated as RAMP. In an only interview with him, he stated that his direct inspiration for creating this site was the success of another well-known site of its kind, the legendary Silk Road. On the forum, the sale of materials involving minors, weapons, and forged documents was forbidden. Discussing political topics was also not allowed. And these basic rules probably determined the site's relative longevity, rules that did not attract much attention from the Russian authorities. According to Darkside himself, interest from Russian law enforcement in RAMP was minimal. At the peak of the site's glory, around 2014, the total turnover exceeded $250,000, and the platform had over 14,000 registered users. Transactions were conducted using cryptocurrencies or the Russian payment intermediary QE. Communications between seller and the buyer took place via encrypted messages using PGP keys or through the Jabber Messenger app. After a successful transaction, the buyer would receive the coordinates of a locker containing the ordered products. In truth, however, this business operated on a large industrial scale. Individual shops employed an entire range of people to carry out on-the-ground work, distributing the purchased product to designated locker locations. At one point, the site even offered courses on becoming a distribution specialist, promising immediate employment after a 14-day training period, provided a series of other conditions were met in order to properly verify the person. RAMP also offered a warranty package for the buyers, which, although optional, was recommended by the site's administration. In this way, for an extra 5% of the order's value, the site's administration actively participated in resolving disputes regarding fraud or the poor quality of goods. In the worst case, regardless of the outcome of mediation or dispute resolution, the client would recover the 5% he paid. In the best case, they could expect a full refund from a special deposit made by the sellers as an insurance for the transaction. Additionally, in cases of fraud, the seller would lose their status. Yet most of the sellers found it unprofitable to scam their customers, especially when they had spent years building up high ratings and credibility, and they were earning quite a bit from the entire operation. Sellers also invested thousands of dollars in ramp advertising to appear as high as possible on the homepage, reaching the maximum possible number of potential customers. At the beginning of 2017, however, the ramp site began to experience serious problems. Constant DDoS attacks and a data breach exposing user information were the main issues that led active users to start leaving the site. In July of 2017, the remaining users lost access to the service, and already in September of the same year, the Russian Ministry of Internal Affairs announced the site's closure. Despite these facts, many insiders believed that Ramp was eliminated by its competition, for it was precisely after the fall of Ramp that the majority of users migrated to the competition, to the Hydra site, which had emerged in 2015. According to a journalistic investigation conducted by the Lenta.ru service, Ramp's collapse was in part due to the actions of Hydra's administration. The final blow for Ramp, however, was the collapse of the Bitcoin E exchange, on which the seller's deposits and the forum owner's insurance budget were held. Around this distinctive platform, various complicated scandals were also unfolding. Its founder, Alexander Alexandrovich Vinnik, was arrested in 2017 on charges of money laundering. Most importantly, however, in the context of Ramp, it is worth noting before Bitcoin E's collapse, over $170 million were withdrawn from the exchange. According to reports by Lenta.ru journalists, the then chief administrator of Ramp, known under the pseudonym Stereotype, was aware of the impending collapse of Bitcoin E, so he shut down his Ramp platform and fled with the money. And then the market was taken over by Hydra, which was suddenly established in 2015. The site was created by merging two darknet sites, YOA and Legal RC, which sold specific substances unavailable on Ramp. The number of Hydra users had been steadily growing since its creation, but the collapse of the Ramp forum dramatically increased the number of registrations. By mid-2019, Hydra had over 2.5 million active accounts, of which at least 393,000 had made at least one purchase. The average value of over 850,000 transactions in just the first half of 2019 was around 4,500 rubles, so a little over $50. What's interesting, however, is that on Hydra, besides illegal substances, one could also purchase counterfeit money, counterfeit documents, or instructions for carrying out illegal activities. Hydra also featured job offers in illegal businesses, most often in the area of production and distribution of many illegal goods. The site's administration comprised several dozen people, including advertising staff, security services, chemists, and what's intriguing, addiction specialists. To use Hydra, you had to register and top up your account, from which funds were then transferred to sellers. For shops, the registration was directly fee-based, $300 to start, plus a $100 monthly subscription fee. If a seller wanted to rank higher in search results, additional fees had to be paid, and everything seemed to work like clockwork. Hydra was practically a monopolist, or pessimistically, at least the most powerful player in the Russian Darknet market for illegal substances. Until a certain point. You see, Hydra had very ambitious development plans. Plans to conquer markets far beyond these of Russian and Eastern European territories. Hydra aimed extremely high, attempting to create a truly global platform for the sole purpose of selling illegal substances. And everything was to be done on good old proved Russian models. This entire business model of Hydra's was to be transferred to more international waters, with all of the implications. But what works in Russia does not necessarily work so well, for example, among Americans, who are known for a more or less effective, but above all, long-term fight against such matters. The Americans won't be satisfied, as the Russians might be, with just a few arrests of low-level distributors. They prefer massive operations, arrests of top players, and huge sums of money. Ultimately, American authorities can pursue illegal markets for years, and above all, they do not forget. In the end, Hydra had already burned a hole in America by selling data of US citizens. Credit card details, debit card details, social security numbers, passport and other address data, as well as access to bank and cryptocurrency accounts. These items were available for purchase on Hydra. The trade in this data further motivated American authorities to take action, especially since the Russian side had turned a blind eye to the operation. Hydra's administration felt a little bit too free and underestimated the capacity and reaction of the USA. In this way, the previously suspected creator of Hydra had been pursued by Interpol for over a decade upon the request of the USA, long before charges were brought against him in his motherland Russia. So other individuals previously associated with Hydra likewise have reason to fear, as they are probably already on the radar of American authorities. Meanwhile, Hydra made direct moves to expand into the American market, attempting to reach it through shell companies in the Dominican Republic, which only heightened the vigilance of the American authorities. And that was probably the pride that preceded Hydra's fall. They just aimed too high and ended up crashing, because everything illegal eventually comes to an end, sooner or later. On April 5th, 2022, the German police officially announced Hydra's shutdown, seizing the site's servers and confiscating bitcoins worth around 23 million euros. Meanwhile, according to the US Department of Justice, behind Hydra was allegedly a 30-year-old Russian businessman, Dmitry Pavlov, although he himself denies any connection to the darknet market. According to the Americans, Pavlov was to receive millions of dollars in commissions from the site for providing the necessary and resilient telecommunications infrastructure, and perhaps he could have been the head of the entire operation. American prosecutors determined that Hydra was responsible for over 80% of all cryptocurrency transactions related to illegal darknet trade. Between 2016 and 2022, over $5 billion were transferred through wallets controlled by Hydra. Moreover, however, after the sudden shutdown, suddenly all selling Hydra shops were faced with a very intriguing problem. Across Russia, the appropriate products had been already distributed to the designated lockers for awaiting customers. Some payments had already been made, but most of the instructions on where to find the purchased products disappeared along with Hydra's collapse. Suddenly, without oversight and without any owners, kilograms of ready-to-be-collected illegal substances were lying around in Moscow. According to Russian experts, the prolonged and rather successful operation of the darknet market Hydra was the result of the Russian authorities' negligence, who preferred to merely appear to fight crime rather than actively fight with it. In this way, there were often arrests of minor distributors, while the essence of the case and operations was widely overlooked. Staying on the main subject, however, the key figure in this entire puzzle is in fact the aforementioned Dmitry Pavlov. Information about him is very scarce on the internet. Apart from his abandoned page on Vkontakte, he is practically a shadow person. However, some journalists have uncovered information about his steadily growing fortune over the years, as well as about his acquaintances who could say nothing bad about him. It's a person who is rather reserved, never the life of the party, said one of his friends. Generally, the connection between Pavlov and the market for illegal substances completely surprised everyone who knew him. He even drank tea at my wedding, echoed another of his acquaintances. Based on the information revealed from the special databases regarding Pavlov's wealth, a very interesting article was written by a user named Kronos Media. So I will now read you a really intriguing story of his pretty rich expenditures. A story in which it is really impossible to find equivalent income sources that would justify such enormous purchases. Pavlov was born on June 15, 1991, in the town of Cherepovets in the Vologda Oblast. After finishing school, Pavlov enrolled in the Faculty of Arts at the Humanitarian University of Trade Unions in St. Petersburg, but in 2011 he dropped out after his third year. However, lacking higher education did not prevent him from, in 2014, at barely 22 years old, buying a property, premises of 314 square meters with cash. This was his first real estate investment. It is unclear, however, for what exact purpose he used the space. According to publicly available data, in the same building there operate 8 different companies, from advertising or security agencies to medical centers and spas. Tenants, however, are not directly connected with Pavlov or his family. It is possible that he used the premises as a server room. After all, Pavlov had been interested in IT since his earliest years, and for a short time he even earned a little bit of money by providing hosting services. Perhaps buying the premises was just an expansion of that IT business of his. It is also very likely that his father, who had been running the company Prom Service LLC since 2003, helped him with the purchase. At that time, his father's company was known as Full Drive Hosting Company, providing dedicated and virtual server hosting services to clients all over Russia. According to the US indictment, it was through his father's company that Pavlov managed the servers for Hydra from November 2015 onward. Public information indicates that it was in fact Pavlov's father's company that hosted the precursor sites to Hydra, Way and Legal RC, which later merged to create Hydra. But we'll return to the main topic, Pavlov's wealth. It kept growing. Already in the fall of 2013, Pavlov also purchased an adjacent plot of 884 square meters and a residential building of 53 square meters. Just a year later, Pavlov sold that house. However, he retained the land rights until 2021, when a drastic restructuring of his assets took place. In 2021 itself, Pavlov apparently suddenly decided to move to St. Petersburg because in first half of 2021 alone, he had already bought 4 properties there, several apartments, 1 parking space and 1 spacious commercial premises. He also purchased 3 residential buildings in his hometown of Cherepovets and 11 land plots. However, real estate wasn't his only passion. Like most wealthy individuals, Pavlov loved buying cars, increasingly expensive cars. First in 2012, he bought a Mazda 6, in 2013 a Mazda CX-6, and in May of 2015 he also purchased a Volvo truck and a JCB excavator. Besides the new Mazda CX-5 in 2021, he bought another car, an Audi Q8, as well as a Volvo excavator and a forklift. And that wasn't the end of his investments in heavy machinery, because in April of 2022, the day after Hydra's collapse and a few days before his arrest, Pavlov bought 2 more Doosan excavators. So what were all these excavators for? In 2021, Pavlov registered a company in St. Petersburg called Russian Media, and this company was just about to engage in building data processing centers. Well, he had probably already begun constructing these centers earlier, which explains his purchases. And where did he get the money for all these properties and expensive toys? His newly established company generated just under 2 million rubles in revenue. That is just about a couple of thousands of dollars. The likelihood that his earlier business earnings were much higher is practically zero. Thus, we must search further. An analysis of Pavlov's real estate transactions shows that he liquidated some of his properties in Cherepovets. But would that cover the cost of his other expensive purchases? To this day, the ultimate source of his income remains unknown. At the time of his arrest, Dmitry Pavlov assets amounted to just over 128 million rubles, roughly about $1 million. And this is allegedly a modest estimate based on publicly available real estate market data. However, as I have explained before, this enormous darknet operation sooner or later had to come to an end, because such businesses have their expiration dates. And suddenly, after the near monopolist Hydra fell in 2022, a huge void was left in the market. And these sorts of markets don't really tolerate vacuum. So quickly, a dynamic battle for becoming number one in the Russian Darknet market operation have just begun. A handful of shops that were then pretty niche started competing as fast as possible for a huge number of customers who have been left alone after the fall of Hydra. And every trick was fair game. Mutual cyber attacks, aggressive ads in the centers of Russia's biggest cities, just anything that could capture attention of customers that have been left alone without their suppliers. In this way, almost unexpectedly and abruptly, the Darknet Market Kraken was launched shortly after Hydra's collapse. From the very beginning, Kraken was dubbed Hydra's successor because of its similar logo and comparable administrative structure. Kraken was said to even employ its own doctors in case of overdosing. Before the project's launch, the ad for the site appeared on one of Moscow's residential blocks, which sparked an outrage. But what is most fascinating and bizarre in the whole situation is that the loudest buzz about Kraken came when a bus wrapped in the platform's logo and QR codes to the site blocked one of Moscow's main roads, Arbat Avenue, for up to several hours. The situation was repeated again on March 22, 2024, when on the day of a terrorist attack on the Crocus Hall in central Moscow, an abandoned vehicle appeared, a Ford Transit smeared with Kraken's logos and QR codes, and the car's speakers blasted at full volume, urging onlookers to check out Kraken and make purchases there. The vehicle stood like that for several hours, exploiting the authorities' inattentiveness. And in cases like this abandoned bus and later this abandoned van on the Arbat Street, it was also a pretty tough nut for the local police to crack. First of all, it is not known at all who actually left that van on the old Arbat. This pedestrian street is watched by a lot of police officers. Of course, also at that time, a huge terrorist attack was taking place on the other side of the city, so this might explain authorities' sluggishness, as they could be simply focused on something else. However, many people more familiar with the matter speculate that the success of this operation might have been due to bribery, or perhaps the individuals responsible for executing this scheme were deceived by their principals into thinking that they were fully legally advertising the opening of a new niche cafe. And ultimately, the funniest part is that the suspected owner of that van, the potential culprit behind the event, would hardly face any noticeable consequences, because under the current law, he didn't commit any crime. Assuming the worst, though most likely scenario, that this advertisement was run without the proper licenses and permits, then it means 1. Driving on a pedestrian crossing results in a fine of around 2,000 rubles, so about $20. And this doesn't even involve one losing his driving license. Second, an unapproved advertising campaign. If the van's owner is an ordinary citizen rather than a business entity, the fine is around 2,500 rubles, so roughly $30. And third, the most serious charge, namely promoting illegal substances, for which it first must be proven that it was indeed deliberate. Under the Russian law, that is a maximum fine of 30,000 rubles, about $400. And this still does not lead to direct criminal responsibility. In January 2023, advertisements for this darknet market dealing in illegal substances also began to appear in Moscow's metro, as if by magic on an ordinary day. There were many more ads for Kraken appearing throughout Moscow, everywhere where it was physically possible. There were also flying balloons broadcasting information about the site from speakers, as well as graffiti drawings on walls, trains and trams. One marketing campaign ended exceptionally tragically when the person responsible for installing an ad on one of Moscow's tall residential blocks attempted to correct it. A 17-story block, and the guy fell. Kraken also ultimately gained much of its popularity through ubiquitous TikTok memes. The sounds of these ads went viral in the East.
Всем привет, друзья! Теперь я работаю на Kraken вместе с Джесси. Вот уже готова первая партия товара.
Здорово. Сейчас мы готовим все в огромных стеклянных колбах.
And it is very possible that the first wave of memes using Kraken's ad sounds was directly orchestrated by the Darknet's store marketing team. And then everything just spread organically. But that too was simply a really huge boost for its recognizability. However, Kraken had many enemies. Another Darknet market, Solaris, swiftly attacked Kraken among other similar sites such as Rutor, Mega, Blacksprut, and many others, using the services of the hacking group Killnet. This hacker group is also an interesting case, because funds stolen from Darknet markets were used to finance the Russian army in Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Killnet also organized many cyber attacks on NATO states and their IT infrastructures, and that sounds really scary, but their attacks mainly consisted of DDoS attacks on government websites, rendering them inaccessible at worst. As much as their actions affected the websites of the Italian Senate, of the European Parliament, the scary Russian hackers from Killnet were unable to take down even the Eurovision Song Contest website. Later, they even threatened to attack even more government websites of other countries, though one such attack failed because they themselves halted it. Precisely because of that failure, many cybersecurity experts note that Killnet are hackers who talk a lot but do very little. Their attacks are most often very limited and amateur, with larger successes likely owed to Russian special services hackers who may have assisted them in some operations. However, at one point, one member of the Killnet group came into conflict with the Belarusian government when in April of 2023, before court, an 18-year-old Arseny Yelisiev was indicted. After his arrest, Arseny began issuing threats directed at Belarusian authorities, saying stuff like they wouldn't relent, saying really bad words, and insisting that the Belarusian government was screwed. They talk a lot, but they don't do much. Coming back to the main topic, however, in response to this hacking attack commissioned by Solaris, Kraken hired hackers from the Way Away forum who broke into the Solaris site and basically merged Solaris with Kraken. Thus, since then, if you enter Solaris website, you are just simply redirected to Kraken. Along the way, a Moldovan streamer promoted the Darknet Mega wearing their t-shirt, at the same time denying any connection with the Darknet market by explaining that Mega was just a file hosting service.
Я бы хотел вам посоветовать надежный файлообменник Mega. В общем, облачное хранилище вмещается бесплатно до 20 гигабайт.
And the Blacksprut market recruited and manipulated top Russian influencers and Instagrammers to advertise Sprut Radio, offering reliable, fresh news and podcasts, providing links to a fake radio station website that redirected users to a hidden platform selling illegal goods. There was also a campaign in which a certain YouTuber conducted an interview with the alleged creator of the Mega Darknet market, where an unknown man in a black suit and mask spoke about his site and actively promoted it.
Здравствуйте, дорогие друзья, меня зовут профессор Мориарти. Кто я такой? Блогер, предприниматель, филантроп. Основатель крупнейшего файлообменника Mega, который все почему-то путают с одноименной наркоплощадкой в Даркнете.
At the same time, apps for Android that allowed direct connection to the Darknet markets began appearing in the Google Play Store, and when Google removed them, installation files started circulating on shadowy Telegram channels and sites independent of Google Play. In February of 2023, Blacksprut's ads began to appear as if by magic on electronic billboards in central Moscow, like in some cyberpunk dystopia, with the caption "For the best." come to me. And so for many years in Russia, darknet markets, big and small, have been fighting for dominance up to this day, and there will be no winners. It is simply too expensive, too loud, and too complicated to become a monopolist like Hydra. Being number one in this darknet world is also really difficult to maintain, because you are always under the investigation of multiple police agencies around the world. So the current situation is beneficial to all the parties, and everyone gets their own piece of the pie. Stay safe on the internet. Thank you very much for watching.